Welcome everyone to another episode of Inside CKP. Today I have with me Mr. Mike Jack Stoumbos. And Mike, am I saying your last name right?
Stoumbos.
Stoumbos. I've been
Yeah,
saying it wrong. Okay,
yeah,
thank
it
you.
happens.
Before we get started, let's pay the bills. This episode is brought to you by Chris Kennedy Publishing. Go to chriskennedypublishing.com for all your science fiction, military science fiction, fantasy, and everything else. And make sure that you join their newsletter because that makes sure that you get all the information that you need for new books that are coming out. And because if you're just relying on social media, you might miss something. Not only that, but you get free stuff. When you sign up for that, you get free books, and they do promotions with other books and everything. So you get a lot of free stuff in addition to that. So make sure you go that. And also, don't forget the Patreon supports this channel as well as CKP. Go ahead and check that out. And of course, you can find all the books from CKP on their Amazon page. And make sure you go check that out. Mike, let's talk about you. Where can people find you and all your socials?
Yeah, the best place to find me is going to be MikeJackStoumbos.com. Um, and, that's my website that has the list of books and, pretty much what you can link to the other things. But along with that, um, my Amazon page, if you go to Amazon and look for Mike Jack Stoumbos, once again, good place to find not only this fine crew books, but a bunch of anthologies, including the Reg of the Future volume recently out. We've also got Facebook. So Facebook is, / Mike Jack Stoumbos, and that will take you to the author page where I post, among other things, announcements for things like this. I've got a Patreon, patreon.com / Mike Jack Stoumbos, which is pretty recently launched, but I've been doing some of the concept art, backstories, world building, and then short stories that I'm either doing early release of or when the rights revert back to me, posting them there for my patrons on Patreon. I have the Twitter page, twitter.com / MJ Stoumbos, and then the YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel is another place to just kind of post fun stuff. So I do some readings from the books, but I will also take songs that I've re-lyriced and sing up there and just post them. That's fun too. And the URL for that is long. So, if you look for Mike Jack Stoumbos on YouTube, you'll find me.
Awesome, thank you. Now you do, in addition to YouTube, you've done like some live launches and stuff like that. Where can people find those?
Yeah, so I guess I didn't plug in the link for that one earlier. So that is a different YouTube channel. That's
Uh,
it's called Zoom Book Launch Party. We've got 4 of them up there so far that I
okay,
think are publicly accessible. And that's been for people in some of the overlapped science fiction fantasy communities.
okay.
Usual ones that I'm connected to with a group called Superstars Writing Seminars.
Mm-hmm.
And for people in the indie scene who are looking to do a release, we get them and a bunch of their friends and whatnot together on Zoom, talk about a new book that they have out. They do a passage reading. We show concept art and cover concepts if that's something they have. Previews for upcoming stuff in their series. Usually we'll do a book drawing giveaway. And so yeah, we keep them around an hour with maybe some give take for Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
And those are book launch events. And in addition to posting them there, I'm starting to make that more available in some of the writing communities. If people are looking to do a formal book launch, then they can hit me up for that.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
All right. We're let's see. Let's get to it. So, I met you last year at FactoryCon, and at that point, you were brand new to Chris Kennedy Publishing.
Yep.
You hadn't published anything with Chris yet, and now, not even a year later, because it'll be a year in October,
Yeah.
you already have 3 books out with Chris
Yeah.
Kennedy Publishing. So, kind of tell me how that came about, and also, let's talk about your books.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was a very cool process. It was kind of a rapid fire thing. I had been getting more and more involved in author communities and author groups,
Mm-hmm.
just because it was something that I knew I wanted to transition to. My life had been very much in teaching for close to a decade,
Mm-hmm.
and I was making a habit of writing more and sending more, and so I'd sold a few short stories. I had like, I think at the time I had about a dozen short stories that had been sold, some of which were already in print, some of which were coming up.
Wow.
And somebody that I knew through one of these writing groups, incidentally, Superstars writing seminars. You might hear me mention that from time to time because it is a pretty cool nexus for getting people together in the sci-fi fantasy community. There was an editor that I'd worked with there, Maya Cleve, who may or may not have been on the show before, and is one of the editors with
We,
CKP.
we we may know her. I don't know.
Yeah.
We might see her in the comments.
Yeah, well, so she had done like some edits and kind of a diagnostic beta read and feedback on one of my other novels that I still have not sold. So it's like the very literary fiction, science fiction piece, and I've sent it out to a bunch of people who are like, "This is really cool, but it's too literary for us, or it's too hard sci-fi for us." I'm like, "All right." So
Mm-hmm.
I ended up just kind of like as a fun project that I'm like, I can just put this out there myself if I don't find anyone who wants it. I started writing a space opera series, and that would be This Fine Crew,
Mm-hmm.
because I had some characters and some concepts and basically things that I wanted to play with in a Star Trek like environment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge Star Trek person. I've got a comm badge tattoo on my chest. Like, I don't go around flashing people all the time, but I'm letting you know that it's there. Um, and there were these like ideas that I had for different kinds of alien species and the assumptions on the cultures that they would bring into play and the weird ways that they would work together or struggle to work together within human environments. And I was like, I can knock this book out pretty quickly. So I made it like a 2 month project. It ended up being 10 weeks. So it was 2 months and some change. I'm fine with that. That was the first one. I'm like, cool, this is doable. And then I wrote the next one a few months later.
Mm-hmm.
And during this process of writing them, I was chatting with some people in online write-ins that I was hosting. So I had people from different writing groups, mostly superstars, also Apex writers, come into Zoom a couple times a week, and we would just get together and work on stuff. And Maya was one of the people who would frequently show up and just like use it as co-working time. We'd
Mm-hmm.
chat about books a bit. We'd get to work. We'd chat a little bit more. We'd get back to work. And in one of these stretches, I had mentioned that I was working on this series and that I was gonna send it out a couple places, see where it went, and then eventually self-pub it if I couldn't find anyone who wanted to pick it up. And at the time, I'd actually just sent it into an acquisitions editor from Bain, who had requested it at an event. And he didn't end up going for it, but I mentioned that to Maya, and she was like, this actually sounds like something that Chris might be into. And so got me in touch with Chris, got me to pitch both of the books. So I pitched both the literary sci-fi one and then this Flying Crew series. Um, and Chris wanted to pick up the This Flying Crew series, and he was like, we do a rapid release model, so usually we'd be looking for at least 3 books. You've got the first 2 done. How long until the third? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, well, let's talk timelines. We can get the third done by this date, and if so, we can get them released, on this timeline. So yeah, so I basically signed up with him to get the third turned in by the end of December, and along the way we would get the first, second, and third books published all 6 weeks apart. So it was like December 10th, January 21st, and March 4th. Had 3 novels out, and those were my first like science fiction novels published, and it was a very cool road. It was a very fast process, though.
All right. Well, people like your book. That's awesome.
Awesome, yeah. It
Um,
is a lot of fun. I had a ton of fun with it. Yeah.
so, I mean, without giving any spoilers, how would you describe the series?
Yeah, so This Fine Crew is a series where if you like the idea of Star Trek and Starfleet Academy, but
Mhm.
want more stuff to go wrong, that's a good place to start. It is not going to be your perfect utopia. They have not figured this stuff out. Um, at the beginning of the first book, we get a bunch of different species that are coming together for the first time to try to work together as this interstellar cooperative venture in the aftermath of various wars and border disputes. None of them really know how to work together, and they don't entirely like each other, but they're giving this thing a go. They're giving it a try. And so the story ends up being told from the point of view of four different cadets. It's one human and then three other alien species. And pretty much the moment they get there to this training academy to try to get them set up in this thing called the Interstellar Initiative, stuff starts going wrong. And it's the kind of thing that makes you question who's in control and what kind of sabotage is going on behind the scenes. And these cadets, because they each have a very different perspective, they each have a very different background. Not to use the Liam Neeson line, but they each have a unique set of skills.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the four of them pretty much need to figure out what the heck is going on in the academy, solve the mystery, save the alliance before it has a chance to destroy itself. And then, books 2 and 3, we're just going to say complications ensue.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
very interesting. All right, and so you said rapid release. So your last book came out in March.
Yep.
Is that right?
March. Yeah.
So should we expect something else coming out of that series coming soon?
Yeah. A little bit more of a gap between books 3 and 4. So the first three are definitely a trilogy. I highly recommend reading them in order if you're going to pick them up. I've heard just because some people have they saw one and picked it up separate from the others, and they were like, "This is pretty cool. I think I need to go back and read the rest of the series."
Mm-hmm.
So 1, 2, and 3 are very much in order. Books 4, 5, and 6 were planned out
Mm-hmm.
to be easy jump-in points. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm somebody who does like to read in order, even the things that feel more episodic.
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably still go through and start at 1. But book 4 is coming out this October, and it can be a jump-in point. And book 4 of This Fine Crew, The Impossible Moon, it is the same core cast of four characters. You're going to see these same cadets now that they're beyond their cadet stage,
Mm-hmm.
when they're getting to go on some more interesting and dangerous away missions. Um, and one in particular that's going to it's going to test some interesting sides of them that you don't get to see tested in the first 3 books. But at the same time, it's a standalone adventure enough that you can just jump right in with book 4. And the reason that I'm doing that is like if any of the next 3 books end up hitting at a really good time for me, like if lightning strikes and it's the
Mm-hmm.
right place, right time, they go big, and everyone is drawn to that one because it's getting a bunch of clicks. I want for it to be a good one for people to just
Yeah,
start, enjoy, and then decide to go back and read the rest if they want to.
that's a good philosophy to have us, be able to stand on its own. Let's see. Marisa had a question. So you should ask him how he sold his first book to the highly discerning best-selling author at a con. Does that make sense to you?
I'm not sure. Oh, I think. Oh, I actually think it does.
Okay.
I think Marisa is alluding to a time when Sean and McGuire bought the book at a convention.
Mm-hmm.
I, that was a bit of a weird one. I was at I was at Norwest Con in Seattle, and Marisa, you can let me know if you're thinking of a totally different thing, and I've taken the ball to the wrong end zone. Um, I was at Norwest Con in Seattle, and I had a table on the sales floor, and had set up my This Fine Crew books, the Writers of the Future volume, and then a bunch of other anthologies, most of which from Wordfire, and it was cool. It was just a good time. I was hanging out selling books, and they had this like booth blocked off right next to me in the corner that nobody else could use until like the time of Shauna McGuire's signing.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, best-selling author Sean McGuire was going to be there for a few hours signing books and hanging out. And uh, I, I will be honest, I did not know some of the Sean McGuire reputation things at the time of, and then I learned them after the fact. Um, but but she was there signing books and selling her books and interacting with some of the other authors that she knew, and like we just kind of got to talking about stuff. I did not ever try to like pitch her my book. I was
Mm-hmm.
just talking to other people as they went by and talking about them. And at some point when I was off on a panel, as she was wrapping up her station for the day, she bought a copy of Signal, of the first book in the series. One of my buddies was manning the table, and I didn't know that had happened. And then I got back later, and the person who sold it was like, oh yeah, the lady who was signing books in the corner just bought a copy. And I was like, oh well, that's cool and intimidating, I'll go with that. But like a week later, like there was a Twitter thread, where she was saying really positive stuff about the book, and I was also not the first to know, but a bunch of people started pinging me. I was like, it's like, Mike, this is awesome, and I'm like, what is going on?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's
but
cool.
that was a fun bit. Yeah, and her commentary was that she usually doesn't like new authors at conventions who try to like oversell their books,
Hmm.
and that yeah. So according to the Twitter thread, the reason that she got it was because I didn't ever try to sell it to her, and I was just like
Yeah.
chatting with people as they went by, and that's been kind of my way as is. When I'm at conventions, if I see somebody wearing anything related to Star Trek, I will start talking to them about Star Trek and ask them if they like to read science fiction.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me as an intro.
Well, yeah, and these famous authors, they must get harassed so
Yeah.
badly at these conventions that it's refreshing when somebody does the soft sell where you weren't even trying to sell it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So let's go back. Let's find out a little bit more about you.
Mhm.
So what when did you know that you wanted to write and become a writer, and how did it start?
Yeah, well, we're gonna go way, way, way back on this one. So I was somebody who said, I wanted to be a writer starting at age 6. I
Oh,
very
wow.
vividly remember that initial conversation of like, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a writer. And the follow up was, okay, what are you gonna do for a real job? And like that's at age 6, so that one does stick.
Mhm.
Um, but I, I've always been somebody who liked storytelling, and it changed a lot in terms of like the way that I approached it. Um, but I started writing short stories very deliberately, trying to like learn to write science fiction short stories when I was in middle school, and that was because my uncle and a couple of our neighbors really liked the Twilight Zone. They liked like super classic science fiction stuff. Um, yeah, we had neighbors that would like want to show us Forbidden Planet and then tuck through and analyze it, and I thought that was great. My brothers thought it was kind of boring, but that's okay. Um, and so yeah, so I started to try to learn to write science fiction short stories based on Twilight Zone episode formula. Um, and because I didn't really know any way to like move forward with that, like I would talk to my teachers and ask them, okay, how do you get something published? And they didn't know, which I was like, okay, well that doesn't help much. I need to go somewhere else. And so the first like big opportunity for me, actually came through theater. So I was involved in theater, musical theater. Um, Also from about middle school. I mean, like my first time like being paid to sing on stage, I was 11.
Oh,
So yeah, so that's where that started. And I was like, oh, I can write stage plays. I can write for stage, and there are people looking for stuff to produce. People are looking for stuff to produce that's free, that they don't have to like pay a playwright for and get the royalties for these kinds of things going on at like high school productions and whatnot. And so I wrote a couple of plays, and I wrote one in particular, a 2-act comedy that a friend of mine wanted to direct when we were in high school, and so I had my first play when it produced when I was 17, and
that's cool.
that was cool. That was a lot of fun, and I continued that into college. So college, I did the English major, drama major, minor in education,
Hmm.
and I wrote another 15 plays while I was there, and had another 7 of them produced during those college years, and then a few thereafter, and it was just something that I thought was really fun to do. But I went in the I went in the like practical day job direction, and I went for my master's in teaching, studying
Hmm.
teaching. And before I finished my teaching degree, I self-published a novel. It's a comedic folk tale. It's one
Hmm.
that I find hilarious, but I just wanted to get it out there, and I didn't really care if it like made it big or anything. I just wanted to have done it so that I wasn't another English teacher who, when like students came up to me and said, "Hey, I want to write. How do you do that?" I would just be like, "Oh, I don't know. Go sit down and do the worksheet."
Yeah.
Um, not to bash on all the teachers that I've had, but like it was something that I really cared
Yeah.
about, and like none of them were able to answer it.
There's some
Uh,
dream crushers out there, man.
yeah. So then I taught full time for a while, and I still like the teaching part of the teaching,
Hmm.
but a lot of the other stuff that's tied to it was just super soul crushing, and to the extent that I wasn't getting any time to write. And even when I had time, I didn't feel like I had the energy or the drive for it. And so it took like some pretty intense, deliberate, like putting the time aside and really going through the work of it. Like when I was first starting to try to get back into writing, it was not enjoyable at all.
Yeah.
It was like I'm forcing myself to do this. And then yeah, about 3 years ago, So yeah, summer of 2019, I made this sort of commitment to myself that I was going to start shifting away from the full time public school mode, and I was going to go into substitute teaching and tutoring just to have more control over time. My wife and I, we ran the budget numbers. And we're like, this is doable, and I'm like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I'm also going to write 3 novels and sell at least 3 short stories a year.
Hmm.
And that was like bigger than I thought I could do, but I figured it was a good place to start. And I didn't make that the first year, but I did make it the next year, and I did make it the next year.
Yeah.
And so by now by now I've had like 20 short story sales, and recently published those 3 novels, and I've got a fourth one in the series coming out this fall, and I'm working on a new novel for the Four Horsemen universe, at
Can you
some
talk about that?
unknown date. So I'm not sure how much of it I'm supposed to talk about, and I don't know if people
Just,
have like protocols in these, but I'll go through and do the little
just
bit.
grace.
Yeah, I actually got into it by talking to Marisa, um, at one of the conventions, and we're just kind of like brainstorming through some different ideas and directions that things can go in. And one of the fascinations that I had was taking species that are not necessarily mercenary species,
Hmm.
and playing with like kind of how they get by in this violent universe that they live in.
Hmm.
And so I'm writing a story about an El Shah, so one of those little gecko mechanic guys,
Hmm.
um, who not necessarily intentionally at first, but starts an uprising and a revolution, and then forms a local defenders guild. I will go with that as enough of a
That's
seed,
a good
but
primer.
it's
That's nice.
it's been a lot of fun to get into. Yeah, that's one that I'm working on right now.
So your first book that you self-published, can we
Mhm.
find that on your website?
Not at the moment. I need to go through and re-upload it to Amazon at some point. It got knocked off,
Okay.
but yeah, I know I need to go through and get a formal cover and get it re-edited and uploaded at some point.
Yeah.
Um, so it's probably out there somewhere, but I
Or
don't think it's available on Amazon right now.
or you could do it like a Patreon thing, is like,
This is
and
true.
tell people, say, hey, you want to see what I was like when I started and how I am now,
Yeah,
give you a signed copy or something. But just a thought.
yeah. No, that's
Uh,
doable. I mean, I could even start posting chapters from it on the Patreon. That's
yeah, there
that's a
you
thing
go.
as well. Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Okay, so you said you're a teacher.
Mhm.
What, and you might have already said this. I apologize. What do you teach? Or what have
I
you taught?
taught I taught English, so high school English for the biggest chunk of time. And then one point when I was switching districts, the new district needed math teachers more than English teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, okay, so this will sound weird, but I'm going to say it anyway. So my first like tutoring gigs were AP Calculus.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing those at age 16, and like then by the time I got into like switching districts and needing to teach something else, I was still tutoring calc, and I was still tutoring SAT math because that's what people wanted to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I'd never like taken any college math, I still knew it.
Mm-hmm.
So they, yeah, so the people that I was working with was like, cool, let's have you go in as a maternity leave replacement to teach AP calculus at the high school. And so I did that for a few months, and that was enough experience that they could get me signed on for an emergency cert. And so I got certified in math, and then I taught high
Oh,
school
cool.
math for 3 years. Um, and yeah, so English language arts, theater, ESL, and math, algebra through calc. So it's been
So,
a range.
as a teacher, are you when you have you gotten to mentor any bright future stars? Have you seen that student yet? Or
Um, now wondering if any of the students that I've worked with are going to see this. So in terms of like math and engineering and problem solving, I think so. Like I've gotten to work with some students who are like really into it and really want to dig in.
Mhm.
In terms of the writing world, not as much from what I've seen yet,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure. And some of that like they might have an interest now that doesn't really spark into the hard work until later. Um, and I hadn't seen that as much.
Mhm.
Uh, I will admit that I was hoping for it.
Yeah, yeah.
I was hoping to like find that person who was like super gung ho and really wanted to make something happen and
Hmm.
would come up and ask the questions
He's
and
like,
just be
you're gonna
like,
be my
yes.
protege.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, but to your point, the going for it, the changing your life so that you can pursue writing and everything. Um, kudos to that because one thing I've heard and it makes sense is like there is no plan B. If you want
Yeah.
to do something, you go do it and you make
Yeah.
it happen. I mean, you still have to make a living, of course, but
Right.
so no, and that's kind of what Marisa and I are doing. For those who are watching this in the future, Marisa Wolf, also an author, is my wife, and
Yeah.
we started traveling full time. It's a twofold thing where well, we wanted to see family, we wanted to see friends, we wanted to see places, but it was also a way to minimize our expenses so that Marisa could write full time
Yeah.
and not have a full time soul sucking grown up job that
Yep.
uh, didn't allow her to do that. So kudos to you. We're kind of in a similar thing, and
Yeah.
it's what allows me to do this and everything. So for your future writers who are watching this in the future, there is no plan B.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do it, do it.
I would agree with that. And like a lot of people through like these writer support groups that I'm part of, have been asking me like if I've gone full time,
Hmm.
so to speak, and they've been asking me that for the last couple of years.
Hmm.
And for the ones who are asking it in a short version, I will say yes, but I also teach.
Hmm. Yeah,
And sometimes I'll give them
teaching
longer
is your
versions, like
sidekick.
break it down. But
Yeah.
my full time focus and my full time commitment is to my author career.
Hmm.
I'm maintaining some other stuff to get by, and a lot of it is also like my wife and I are working together on this. Like she
Hmm.
has been excellent in being part of a strong partnership where you support each other. I think is super helpful in this. Going at it solo seems much harder.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, but in terms of mindset, yeah, I have been very much in the there is no plan B, and yet I'm also aware that I need to make sure that I'm maintaining some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so it's not a fallback. It's enough of a foundation to keep going.
Yeah. It's your side hustle.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, I get that. But I think that's awesome because if you don't go for it, you'll always regret it.
yeah.
And that's the way to go. So back to writing.
Hmm.
Um, so you started very young.
Hmm.
So wait, how old were you when you first got published? And it
So
was
I had my first stage play produced at 17.
at 17. That's what I thought. I thought you were
Yeah.
reading, but you started writing at 11.
Yep.
So were there any because you always hear about these teachers or friends or family members that like to crush dreams and things like that. Did you have any of those barriers, uh,
Um.
or were you you know?
Yeah, I would say yes. I mean, I think a lot of us have had that in some way.
Hmm.
Uh. Yeah. I would say yes. I don't really want to go too deep into it because
Yeah, you don't want
I kind of want to focus on like the
it's like
where I
name
am now and the
names.
building the positive thing. So yeah, but I would say yes.
So what did you first? I know you first got published with theater, but what when you started writing at 11, what kind of things were you writing? Was it just purely science fiction? Was it fantasy? What?
Yep. It was at the time it was purely science fiction, and it was
Mhm.
science fiction with a gotcha ending. It was a it was the twist ending science fiction thing. Um, and like and some of them were actually reasonable short story concepts. Like they were fun to trot out, and a lot of them I also found out were very overdone in some form. I just
Mhm.
hadn't read those pieces yet, and so I was like, cool, I've come up with this awesome thing. And I remember there was a time when it was really disheartening to find out that somebody else had already done something kind of like
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Uh, and then I kind of grew out of that, and I'm just like cool. I've read a bunch of stuff, and I've seen a lot of overlaps, and by now I've read enough that I kind of know what I like and I know what I want to do.
Mhm.
I do not know which author I'm stealing this from,
Mhm.
but there was one presenter at a conference that I was at who said like, as an author, you don't want to try to do it entirely different, and you don't want to do it entirely the same. If you do it entirely the same, there's somebody who's doing it better, faster, more reliably, who already has the audience, and you're not
Mhm.
going to be able to follow them. And if you're doing something entirely different, nobody's going to want to invest in you if they don't know you. You
Mhm.
have to get to a certain point to do things that are weird and risky and different enough. And just like in terms of genre expectations, you have to give people like 85% of what they're looking for, and like
Mhm.
15% that's just you.
Yeah.
And so when I heard that, I was like, cool. That feels like something that I'd been trying to do, but I didn't know how to put into words. And so that's one that I now keep passing on in terms of ways to approach that. So yeah. So yeah, at the time, science fiction short stories. I wrote my first novel at 15, and that's one that will probably never see the light of day. It was a 240,000 word monstrosity
Oh
because
wow.
I was like, I had read the Stephen King on writing, and it was like, oh, light from heaven kind of thing, and I'm like, cool, I'm
You
gonna
start
write 2,000
smoking
words a day,
cigarettes.
get the thing down. Yeah, so I mean, that was that first commitment of like, all right, 2,000 words a day doing the thing. So yeah, so I wrote that one, rewrote it a couple years later, and it was like it's not bad per se. It was just a great learning process, and it was for me. Um, and I will probably never go about publishing it.
Well, so do you ever, like some of your earlier stuff, not like when you were 11 or anything, but
Mhm.
go back to your old stuff and say, man, if I redid this and went in this direction, this might not be a bad book. Does that ever happen to you? Or
Some, but I feel like it's a lot faster for me to just work on the new thing and
Mhm.
crank that out, get that edited, get that done. There are
Yeah.
some that I would like to revisit. So like the first book that I self-pubbed, when I go back and read it, like I'm not embarrassed by it or ashamed of it or anything. Like it's just fun.
Hmm.
And it really reflects on what I was reading and writing at the time. I don't write a lot of folkloric fantasy these days, but it still comes up from time to time. In fact, the first pro sale that I had in short stories, the first 8 cents a word sale was folkloric fantasy again, and it was a folkloric fantasy comedy that was like super entrenched in like you know uh, British lore and stuff. So my mom's family is Swedish and English, and
Yeah.
like there's some of that I'm like, cool, I'm gonna dive into that. My dad's side of the family is Greek. That's where the Stoumbos comes from.
Mhm.
And then I sold a Greek short story, Greek folkloric short story this last Christmas.
Oh, that's pretty
Um,
cool.
and that one's in a little Christmas binding, and it's a Greek New Year's folk tale about luck. Um, and I set it in my grandfather's village, and yeah, and based the characters off people in my family, and it was just a ton of fun. So I still do some of that in those genres,
That's cool.
but like I tend to be more interested in like whatever's the new project that I'm working on and finding a home for it than going back and trying to restructure and rework something that I've written previously. I might renege on that. I might eventually find something to
Yeah.
retreat,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So, well, you're kind of touching on my next question. What is your because you're talking about having fun with your
Yeah.
writing and everything. What's your favorite thing about writing? What does it give you?
He gives me a lot of stuff. Like I was in a workshop a while back where Tim Powers kept saying. So Tim Powers taught the Write of the Future workshop, and he kept saying like, the reason why you want to become a writer is to show off. You're gonna get your books out there for other people. I mean, like if you really just want to tell the stories, you just tell the stories, and it wouldn't matter if you ever sold. And,
Hmm.
and I kind of like that, just to think about it and give it the license there.
Hmm.
But for me in the writing process, I like the point that I can get to where I am no longer actively thinking about, what I need to say, how I need to phrase it,
Hmm.
and I'm just telling the story, and I'm kind of getting to like run through and experience this story, and I feel like I'm feeling it and experiencing it in real time, and that's awesome. Um, if after I've done that, I send it somewhere, like in the case of a short story, I send it somewhere and then I get comments back from an editor and they like it and accept it. I'm like, cool, I have made somebody else feel that thing that I was feeling when I was writing it. And I've got, uh, might address this one later. There's a story coming out this August, so August 1st through the publisher Zombies Need Brains.
Hmm.
And it's a science fiction volume called Brave New Worlds. And that one is probably my favorite short story that I've ever written,
Hmm.
um, because it's this deep space murder mystery thriller, in which there's a ship that pretty much everyone is put into deep sleep except for a couple of rotating ship's custodians that have to go through and like run their checks and stuff like that. And the night custodian wakes up a little bit after they're supposed to because the alarm didn't go off, and there's some things messed up with their music, their sort of their playlist that keeps them calm when they're by themselves,
Oh, okay.
and then discovers dead bodies, recently murdered people, and has to go through the process of like, all right, crap, let's investigate this. What happened while I was sleeping?
Mm,
And it's like it was so enjoyable to write that story. The story's called Dead of Night, and it was originally I wrote it while I was listening to Blackbird on loop. Kid you not. Uh, and I just had so much fun digging into that story and digging into that character's psyche and all of like the stuff that you might think of if you run into dead bodies and you're wondering what happened at a time when you might theoretically have been responsible.
mm,
And actually when I sold the story, we had to rework it a bit because I had included a couple lyrics from Blackbird, and then we contacted for copyright reasons. We're like, can we license this? Can we use it? And it ended up being out of budget. And so we're like, all right, so here are the options. We can like nix those pieces. We can talk about them in super subtle references, or I can write my own song and rewrite the stuff around it so that the comfort song that this character listens to on loop is one of my songs that I have total
yeah.
rights to. So I did that. So I wrote a song for it, which we're gonna also release, along with the anthology at the beginning of August.
Very cool.
Um, and it was just so much fun to dig into. I enjoyed the process of going through this character's like experience and honestly terror. Like it was just this thrilling sense of terror to be part of it, and then to write a song around it. Like I'm into it. I'm into it every step of the way.
So is there any chance that because the way you've described it, I would like to read this. Is there any chance that this could be expanded into a novel or anything
Well,
like that? It sounds fun.
so that one specifically short is going to be short story. If there's a chance of expanding it into a novel, it would probably be like a series of episodes of what happens on this long term voyage,
Hmm.
of which this is one of them.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
No, that's
yeah,
it sounds fun, you know.
yeah.
So let's see. So right now, you kind of alluded already that there's going to be a book four
Hmm.
in this fine crew, which
Yes.
sounds like everybody's looking forward to.
Yeah.
What other and then the 4HU story that you alluded to that we can't talk too much about.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you're working on? Short stories, project theater, anything like that that's going on?
Yeah. So the theater's been backburnered for a while. Like usually the only theater that I do is when I'm working with students and I happen to recite something, or if I record myself singing something and post it on YouTube. But that's all just for fun. Um,
Karaoke.
yeah. But I've got 7 short stories that are coming out over the course of the next however many months to a year. And there are some of that are really cool highlights. One of them with the Brave New Worlds from Zombies Need Brains. Um, I've got a couple other science fiction pieces coming through Cthulhu and Dreamforge, and then one that I'm really looking forward to. Sort of the pre-sale hype that they're going to get for it is with a press called Impulsive Walrus. So Impulsive Walrus is doing an anthology called Cthulhuficon,
Hmm.
and the premise of this is like, picture a convention, like a science fiction fantasy convention, that is hosted on an island and a river that is occupied by an elder god, and shenanigans from there. And so I have a story in that one, uh, and I'm seriously excited about that upcoming anthology. And some of my buddies are in there as well, and so I'm going to be able to share it with Frank Morin again, and I believe, oh, I'm not going to say the other name because I should verify. But one of the stories is also available in advance. Oh yeah, cool, you put it up there. So with Impulsive Walrus Books, Cthulhu News, they have a preview story out in advance, and in a little bit they're going to be launching a Kickstarter for pre-sales. Um, so that is one of those things that I will talk up and highly encourage. But I'm seriously excited to read this whole thing because it is going to be fun. Like there's going to be a lot of comedy, a lot of like splattercon kind of stuff going on in this Cthulhu verse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. So, do you write horror or anything like that, or you stick to the space operas and Star
Uh,
Trekky stuff?
I do write some horror, but usually when I write horror, it's because it's either somewhere in the space opera vein anyway, or it's a little bit of horror comedy, like it's cheeky in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So my story for Cthulhu Con is definitely a horror comedy, and I did get the very positive laugh out loud response from the publisher, um, and so I'm like, that's great. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, I've done like sort of a weird Western horror story, which
Okay.
it was a certain kind of weird, and the weird was what inspired me to do it. So I guess I wouldn't say that I do a ton of strict horror.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's either space horror or super cheeky.
So, you were, um, talking earlier, about, enjoying writing and kind of
Mhm.
letting the muse, if you will, take you. Or do you ever, um, like read some, like you're going over, some chapters and stuff that you've written, and goes like, man, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
And surprise yourself, when you go back and read your own stuff.
yeah, yeah. There are definitely things that I write that, like when they come out, they're during a flow, and I don't think about it at the time of, and so it's not until afterwards when I go and read it and edit it that I remember it. I'm like, oh yeah, that was fun, and often, I mean this happens a lot more for one of the characters in this fine crew than the others.
Hmm.
Um, there's a like 6 foot tall lizard character named Casil,
Hmm.
uh, who seems to be a lot of the favorite in the audience. So like when people talk about a favorite character out of the core four, Casil's usually the one. And there are just these asides that Casil has about like just general observations about the universe and how fascinating and beautiful and edible most of it is.
Hmm.
Um, and when I read those things afterwards, like there are some that will just like make me stop and like because I have to have a laugh in order to get through it and keep reading afterwards. So yeah, but probably more for the humor than the other stuff these days.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because every now and then Marisa will be writing something, and she'll read me a line. I know she's impressed with herself when she reads me a line, or,
Hmm.
or something like that. So that's pretty good, right? And I was like, and I always, of course, I say yes because she's looking for that validation. But every now and then she reads something to me. It's like, oh, damn, that would get my attention if I was reading a book. So I
Yeah.
to ask that one. Let's see, kind of story. So, what kind of stories? Like I said, we already talked about your follow ups and your 4HU stuff. What other, like, not like full novels can we expect from you in the future? Is there anything that you've got planned that
Yeah.
we can see?
So yeah, on the full novel front, there's gonna be at least another three This Fine Crew books.
Oh
So
wow!
there's gonna be a four, a five, and a six. And I do have soft outlines for 7, 8, 9 as well.
Oh wow!
And so
Oh, this is a long series.
it's
Okay.
kind of just a question of people are if people are enjoying and reading it, I'm probably gonna keep writing them.
That's awesome.
And then it's possible that I'll veer off in a certain direction. Like I might not always stay with the same core four characters. Um, but it's a big universe and there's a lot of stuff that I've set up. I think it would be cool at some point to get some more writers into it.
Mhm.
If if that's where the demand is, and if there are writers who want to jump into the universe and write within this fine crew, I think that would also be fun.
That's cool.
And then I've got a few other novels that I have written that I'm going to be querying and trying to place, and I'm not really sure the direction those will go. I'm always really torn until like somebody actually says go. I'm really torn on like which direction makes the most sense in terms of self-publishing, going through like an indie press or a smaller medium press, or
Hmm.
trying to go big and trying to like get the agent and get to like a Penguin Random House kind of deal. And I truly don't know what it is going to happen with some of the others, but yeah, I've got three others that are finished that I'm trying to figure out what direction to take them in. Um,
Can you
let's
can you
see.
tease like what genre?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, one of them is a very literary, far future science fiction, and I don't like. I love this book. I've read this one more than a few times by now, and I had a lot of teachers read it because it was very much like I feel like I wrote this thing for teachers. It is about two scientists in a future far enough away and removed enough from us that basically people have overcome aging and
Mm,
and in this perfect eternal life that they're living, they no longer feel like they have the need to have children, and
mhm,
so they stop, and they're also living long enough that they will systematically purge any memories that they don't want to deal with. So it is sort of this like this newfound eternal childhood, like they're Peter Panning around the
oh
universe,
yeah.
and then I'm going to say in the course of events, to make a long story short, they find a an infant in an escape pod at a destroyed site of some other community, and
Mhm,
so it is the first human infant that anyone has interacted with in living memory. They have records of this written, but nobody remembers what it's like.
mhm,
And so two scientists end up setting up this live-in pod in this live-in home to study the infant. And complications ensue. So, so one that I tend to refer to as like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind meets 2001: A Space Odyssey, because over the course of the book, there's this sort of like cat and mouse memento working backwards through these memories that have been nixed or rewritten in regard to how humanity and how the universe came to be the way that it was, and I enjoy the heck out of this book, and you know if at some point I do not end up finding, that one agent and that one,
mhm.
Penguin Random House deal, I will probably eventually self pub it just
Okay,
because it will have to get out there. Um,
that sounds very. I'm excited about that one.
yeah, like,
That sounds cool.
it's just yeah, it was a really enjoyable piece. It was one of those things that I I felt like I wasn't seeing in what I was reading in science fiction, and I had
Mhm,
this story just percolating in my head, and I'm like, okay, if this doesn't exist yet in science fiction, I need to write it. Um, and then I've got some others that are of the more like fun, playful variety. I wrote a series of like episodic short stories that all string together into a novel that I call The Legend of Rock, and it's an alt history music punk
mhm,
series where people are using music as a literal weapon. Um, and so in this universe, because music, when it's electronically amplified, can be, used with insane destructive force, a
mhm.
lot of music is outlawed, and anything electric with music is outlawed. And so we do get a hero who is basically wielding an electric guitar in order to, slam people across the room, so to speak, and literally.
Yeah.
And it was like that was a cool one to write, and I wrote it out, sent it to a couple people, and here's where I learned some things about using lyrics. They were like, "Yeah, we can't do this because there are too many references to too many songs that would eventually get you sued." I'm like, "All right." So I can go backwards and mine through that one, take out all the references that I thought were fun and like great tribute to these to these songs. So that's one that I'm hoping to be able to get that to a point where I can either get it into the hands of an agent who will take care of the legal stuff on their own if there is legal stuff to take
Mhm,
care of,
mhm.
or trim it down enough that I can put it out there. Um, and yeah, like those are two of them that stand out, and there are a couple others that there's one more that's finished that I'm not going to say anything about it now because I'm getting it close to the point that I'm going to start like sending it out and querying agents, and I want to see
Sure.
where that goes and where it lands. And also, weirdly enough, if I need to produce that under a pen name, and that's a weird side tease, but I'll move on from that. And then yeah, so
That's cool.
I have
Well,
ideas. I have more things that I want to write.
yeah, that's cool, man. Because I'm sensing a common theme. You like to put music that you like in your books, but then you
Yeah,
have to yank it out
yeah,
because you don't want to get sued.
right.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, so for the Legend of Rock, I also wrote my own songs. Like
that's
I
cool.
wrote a 20 song album for it. Uh,
Wow.
Yeah, and I haven't really done anything with it because there's my own music in it, and the other pieces were just references. It was just like
Mhm,
these quick asides where like if people are reading it and they happen to be familiar with the lyrics of Riders on the Storm, for example, they will
mhm.
pick up on this thing and it'll be like an ooh, that's a cool moment.
That's cool.
Um, but I don't want to get sued.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Now, now I know your focus now is on writing with your side hustle is teaching.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, you were at one point you were teaching full time.
Hmm.
You're still working out. What's your writing process? How do you get it done? Are you a planner? Are you a pantser? What are you? What is your style?
I think that I'm more of a planner than a pantser. That said, most of my plot outlines I think don't fit what a lot of people assume when they think of planner.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll turn on like my dictation software. I use Dragon. I'll turn on Dragon and I'll turn on the recording on the computer and I'll just spitfire things. And that's like my first go. And I will write out like the movie trailer highlights of the book that I want to write.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I'll go through and I'll do an outline, and I usually do outlines that are also not in what people expect. I do a 5 act outline,
Mm-hmm.
um, that I break into. Uh, yeah, it's weird and confusing. It's one of those things that I think I pulled from theater and found a way that I liked it. But yeah, I do a 5 act outline, um, and it's like chicken scratch to anyone but me. I will take some time to draw the characters. Like I will doodle how they look so that I have like a consistent thing that I can look at and reference. And then I will just start. And I try to start and keep going and not stop and like looping edits
Mm-hmm.
until I get to the end. And I do a little bit of that, but yeah, so for book 4, I actually did the entire thing start to finish by dictation without typing a single word until after I hit the end. And then I went back and I typed in some things. And I think that was too extreme.
Yeah.
And I think I need to hybrid it a little bit more, do it, some dictation, some typing. Um, but so far, all of the This Fine Crew books have been 10-week writes, except for book 4, that was a 12-week write. Um, and they go pretty fast. So usually once I have an idea and I know how it ends and I
Mm-hmm.
can like put together this movie trailer version that I'm super excited about, I stay excited. If I'm going like if I can get it done in 2 to 3 months, I will stay excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love your idea about doodling what your characters look like
Yeah.
because I don't have much of an imagination. So, and I've said this before on the podcast, to where if if there's a book I haven't read, but I know there's a movie out for it or a TV
Hmm.
show, I will watch the TV show first. Mainly, well, for many reasons. One, so I'm not the one saying, "Oh, the book was so much better," uh, but it's for me, it's point of reference, like the Dresden Files.
Yeah.
When that series, I saw the series before I even picked up one of the books, and I liked the actor and everything. And now I have all these points of references. What does this character look like? What do they sound like? You know, no, that's not always a good thing because sometimes the character is so different from,
Right.
one medium to the next. But I think that's a great idea that you doodle those,
Yeah.
and um, not only that, but it sounds like theater has really helped you, or at least influenced your writing a lot.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, one of the difficulties that I have with dictation sometimes, and this is like super first world problems, but one of the difficulties I have with dictation is that I will start doing something in a character's voice, and it will be different enough from my own speech pattern that the dictation can't figure out what I'm saying.
Oh, that's funny.
Um, and so that's one of the reasons that sometimes I will do it on 2 devices at once. I'll have one recording the audio and one taking the speech to text, so that if it's warped enough that I can't tell what I wrote,
Hmm.
I can listen back through it afterwards.
So that's your acting. You start acting
Hmm.
while you're dictating. That's funny.
Yeah.
that's
I
that's
like
funny.
it. Yeah, it's my process is very multimedia. Like even though the end result is very much like black and white text,
Hmm.
my process is super multimedia. Like I'm gonna draw pieces of it. I'm going to sing pieces of it. I will be acting as I go. It's yeah. I am a very yes and person in the process. The final just looks clean.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So, you were talking about writing. You write all these. So, like, you did sounds like a full album for your book.
Yeah,
Do you
going to
ever that sounds like something that fans would love, like
yeah,
as one of
be
your
cool.
things for Patreon
Hmm.
or what have you. You ever, whether it's you performing it or it's just a written song or what have you? Have you thought of doing something like that? Given leaking
Yeah,
some of that out to the fans.
I've thought of it and I've done some of those pieces. Like
Hmm.
so doing the doing the song that's specifically for the story coming out in August, like this is the first time that I'm doing it in a dedicated way where I actually also have a publisher backing
Mm-hmm.
it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a cool part of the process for me because it legitimizes it. It's not just me as an amateur songwriter who's noodling around and is just having fun with it. There's somebody like saying like, no, this is legitimate. This is a real thing. And there was one of my other songs that whose lyrics are in the story, and I never actually recorded and produced the song, but I know how it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
So it was in an anthology that came out like 2 years ago. It's called "Hold Your Fire," and it was a tribute anthology to Neil Peart from Rush, because Kevin J. Anderson, the editor and publisher of that one, was friends with Neil,
Mm-hmm.
and after he passed, he wanted to put together this tribute anthology of inspiration, and so I wrote an alien abduction story featuring a country rock singer, and I wrote his main song
Mm-hmm.
um, at the time, and that was fun. And so the lyrics of that are included in the story. I just don't have the recording
That's
posted
cool.
anywhere, and that's something that I should get on, like make that available. Um, yeah.
Yeah, you should go on tour with Kevin Steverson.
Cool. I'm into it. What do we do? Uh, Kevin, if you're watching, let's make this happen.
No, that's fun, man. So I was talking about movies, TVs,
Mhm.
and things like that. Is there what outside of writing and other than music? Because we've covered music.
Yeah.
Are you really into like movies, vacation? I mean, it can be music, but
Yeah.
um, uh, you know, activities. What are you into outside of writing?
Yeah, so music is going to be a big one. Like, if I have the opportunity to go for karaoke, I'll do it.
Hmm.
I recently moved across the country from Seattle to Richmond, and in Seattle, pre-COVID, there was a very active blues dance scene,
Oh,
and so
cool.
I was heavily involved in that as well. So blues dance and blues fusion, and then all the music that had to do with that was cool. So shortly before I moved across the country, I actually got to perform at some venues for that. So I DJ'd, and some of the songs on the DJ list were without lyrics. I just had the instrumental versions so that I
Uh,
could perform them. So I
oh,
was
that's
able to
cool.
sing those on stage, and so that was great. Um, yeah, I'm also into board games,
Hmm.
the intense strategy worker placement style board games are a lot of fun. Anything that can overlap with a science fiction or fantasy adventure, I'm into as well.
Hmm.
I'm not really currently running a D&D campaign. My wife would tell me that I am, though. So i
Yeah.
am i am on brief hiatus for running a D&D campaign, um, which I'll get back to when that's finished. So yeah, those are some of the big ones. My wife and I like cooking and baking. Like, I'm not gonna try to claim that I'm brilliant at it, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So we take weird projects and we're like, all right, we're gonna try to tackle this one today. Um,
That's fun.
yeah. So earlier today, I made a miso caramel sauce and banana foster for said caramel sauce to put over a custard that the Morrigan made yesterday. It was a really good combination. Yeah, we ended up modeling it after this one Japanese restaurant that we went to, and we had it was a banana miso dessert, and we're like, we need to try to duplicate this thing.
Okay, well, in that case, what are you planning on doing for the potluck for FactoryCon?
Morgan and I have talked about getting a smoker
Hmm.
again. So we did have a smoker. We had a freestanding smoker, and we would make it was like a 12-day pastrami. It
Hmm.
was really, really
Oh, wow.
good. So that's something that we've talked about. I don't know if we're gonna be quite that adventurous.
Yeah, that
Um,
sounds like an ordeal.
but yeah, but I don't know. There's some weird ideas percolating around. There's a part of me that wants to bring something very Greek,
Hmm.
like yeah, if I can put together a massive tray of super authentic to me and my section of the family. Some people disagree.
Hmm.
Spanakopita, then I'll bring that. So some kind of thing that would be fun. I'm sure we'll bring something, or we'll bring something that we can make at the time of, and sort of rope the other people staying with us into helping. So we've got a couple of the newer CKP authors are going to be staying with us in the cabin.
Oh, cool.
So Mike Wyant, who his book Fallen Hunter just released.
Hmm.
Um, so he and his wife are going to be staying with us in the cabin, and Trisha Waldridge, who like recently got some stuff started with new mythology, and I'm not sure what I'm allowed to talk about there, but I know that I'm allowed to talk about her as being part of stuff. But I think otherwise it's under wraps with Rob Howell at the moment. So
Oh,
yeah, uh, so we'll have some more people together at FactoryCon and like getting some of the new folks.
okay. Yvonne says bring sides.
Bring sides.
All
Yeah,
right.
a lot of people bring mains. Yeah, we have to bring the sides.
Oh, yeah. All I ever do, I make chocolate chip cookies, and that's all I promise.
Nice. Yeah.
All right. So, getting back to books.
Yeah.
What is there anything that you're reading right now or have read recently that you love and would recommend to people?
Yeah. One of my favorite books to recommend to people who like science fiction, space opera, and want to see like a quick example is Orphans of the Sky
Mhm.
by Robert Heinlein. Heinlein or Heinlein. I'm not sure if people are going to correct me on pronunciation, but that one is one of my favorites for like a really quick immersive adventure. There's some longer ones of the Heinlein variety that I will also get into, but like that's one that I'll recommend to people because I work with so many, um, you know, students because I work with high schoolers. I had a long time where I had them recommend books to me. I had them assign me books. I had them assign 5 books at the beginning of the year, and I would read through them really pretty much whatever they told me that they thought I should read. And there was one that came out of that I found myself recommending a lot for world building. It's a series by Holly Black. The first book is called White Cat, and
Mhm.
it's like an urban fantasy mobster book, and I like that one to me is a masterclass on like effortless world building.
Mhm.
Everything that you need to know about the world building, it is there for you like at the time that you need it, and it never feels like any amount of info dump. It never feels like you missed anything. It never feels like you need to backtrack to find anything, and it never feels like they're telling you just to tell you.
Mhm.
So that one I do recommend. Currently, I'm reading the C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy because at the Right is the Future workshop, 2 people said that the third book in that trilogy was the most influential thing that they ever read, and that one's called That Hideous Strength. I have not gotten to it yet. I am almost done with book 2, Paralandra, and loved book 1. Book 2, I don't think holds up to book 1, but that's okay. Not to offend any C.S. Lewis fans out there. Uh, and then on a pretty regular basis, I will read some of the just newer space opera stuff that's coming out. Renegade Star series has been great for me. Renegade Star series by Jan Chaney. It's like if you want some fast novella novel length stuff, like basically for somebody who really liked Firefly and didn't want it to end. Um, Renegade Star is the Jan Chaney one, and so when I found out that that Chris was doing a co-authored bit with Jan Chaney and like the Uplink Squadron thing, I'm like, yes, that's awesome. I'm in. I got to read this thing on day one. So looking forward to that.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah,
So we're getting close to the end here. I want you to tell me what's coming up next for you that you're excited about. You've already kind of talked about some of your future projects and stuff. If you want to reiterate anything, promote anything that you're excited that's coming up for you.
yeah, cool. I'm also going to address one that I've mentioned in pieces, but so one that recently released in print is The Writers of the Future, Volume 38. I'm even gonna take a
Oh
moment
yeah.
and do to that. Writers of the Future, Volume 38. Um, on the bestseller list on Amazon. I have an award-winning story in this, and that's been a lot of fun. Uh, definitely the most that I got paid for a short story ever, and that's fun too.
Doesn't hurt.
So yes, that one released like just a week ago, and you can find it at like whatever major bookstores and on Amazon. Um, Brave New Worlds from Zombies Need Brains comes out August 1st, and along with that, the accompanying song, which I will have on my Patreon and then also post on YouTube and make that available along with the story. As we get further into the fall, this September, I'm going to be running a pre-sale on Kickstarter for an anthology that I'm editing and curating through the Superstars Writing Seminars community, Superstars Writing Seminars, and Apex Writing Group communities. So overlap of writer support circles.
Oh wow.
And then in October, book 4 of This Fine Crew releases. Book 4, The Impossible Moon. which if you haven't read any of the rest of the series, it is still readable and enjoyable. If you are thinking about possibly reading the rest of the series, you've got a few months. So you can read Signal Out of Space, Rupture in
Hmm.
Time, and Seed in the Sky and be ready for The Impossible Moon when it hits. So those are the big ones coming up. Yeah.
Okay. So, what about where can people see you? Do you have any events coming up? Your YouTube channel,
Oh, thanks.
anything
Yeah,
like
I
that?
forgot about that. Thanks. Yeah, so for events, about 10 days from now, we'll be in North Carolina at Congregate. And I'm going to be on a few panels there, and then also teaching some workshops. So bringing in the creative writing teacher mode, and so in particular, if people are interested in NaNoWriMo and doing like a word count challenge for a month,
Hmm.
I'm doing a 2 hour workshop on that one, and that's something that I've gotten to run a few times because it's something that I like to coach. And then looking further ahead, the next big one is the yes, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Yeah. The next big one is Dragon Con. So Dragon Con in Atlanta in September. Um, yeah, and there are going to be a few others, but that's the nearest and that's the biggest. So
Well, and don't forget FactoryCon. We'll see you
and
there.
FactoryCon, yes, the
Uh,
FactoryCon. That's a great reminder. Usually FactoryCon is when I'm like I'm not sure if we advertise this to the general public, but this is the CKP Inside. So yeah, we'll be at FactoryCon as well.
all
Uh,
right, cool.
and that'll be right before the release of Book Four.
Cool. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of Dragon Con, for those who have not put in their votes yet, you only have a few more days for the Dragon Awards. I believe I have the actual application um, URL. There it is. So if you haven't voted yet, go vote for your favorite CKP novel for this. I, bel I can't recall which ones are up for it right now, but go in there, find your favorite CK book, and nominate it for an award. This is how we get recognition for what we do. I say we, I meant for writers. So go ahead and support your favorite writers in that way.
How many books can you nominate?
Oh, that's a good question. Anybody in the comments know how many you can nominate?
Because I'm pretty sure that you can do more than one. I haven't looked at the form in a while.
Yeah, that's a good question. If
Yeah.
anybody knows, but anyway,
Yeah.
uh, well, one per category. Thanks, Chris.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, cool. Let's see. Anything else you'd like to promote or go over? Or
That's it as far as I can remember. If you know of something that I'm missing, let me know. But
well, do you have any? I know your YouTube channel is kind of your fun
yeah.
expression of you. So, do you have anything coming up there, or for uh, Zoom your Zoom meetings that you do, or anything
Oh
like that
yeah.
that's coming up?
Um, I don't think that I have anything scheduled for like Zoom book launches that I'm doing until this fall.
Okay.
I'll have to check the schedule on that one. Um, so Diane Reed, who's recently joined the new mythology team, she's got a book coming out in October, and um, so I'm believe I'm going to be running the book launch for that in the beginning of October. But
Mhm.
I don't think I have anything else on the list until then.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So I'm gonna start wrapping up here. I'm gonna do a few promotions. Of course, our if you go to the Chris Kennedy Publishing YouTube page, you can see all the um, affiliated YouTube channels that we associate with: Dudes in Hyperspace, Casey Zell. Um, Now Mike's channel is also on there. Go there, support all of us. Like, subscribe. Go to now, Mike. Do you have a newsletter?
I do, yeah. So I have a newsletter, and that one's also available through my website. Is the easiest way to find it. So when you go to the website, you can click on the free story button or anything that says newsletter, and that will be able to pop you to that place.
See, that's great. Free stuff. Everybody loves
Free
free
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
You could do the same thing on Chris Kennedy Publishing. Go get your free book. If you want to keep track of your favorite authors or your favorite publishers and what they're doing, the best way is to sign up for their newsletters, because you're going to get the most up-to-date information on those.
Yep.
In addition to that, this morning we dropped the latest episode of the Hit World Valkyrie series with JD Blackrose. Go check that out. All these we're releasing these every other week, leading up to the release of the Valkyries Initiative in September, where we're going to do a panel interview with as many authors from the anthology as we can get on. Next week's episode is going to be, it's not going to be live, it's going to be a pre-recorded episode with our girl Casey Ezel, who is back from Japan finally, and we're going to start seeing her a lot more often now that she's retired from the military. We're gonna pre-record the show due to her traveling, and but that'll come out next week. And I believe that is all that I have.
Awesome.
And Mike, I want to thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you for hosting.
You tell great stories. It was a great conversation. You're welcome back anytime you want to come on.
Thanks.
And all you got to do is give me a holler, and we'll make it happen.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Again, thanks to Chris Kennedy Publishing for supporting this podcast. Go there for all your sci-fi, fantasy, horror needs, and much, much more. And until next week, have a great day. And I'm trying to find my artwork here. Thanks to everyone for watching. Mike, thanks for coming on. Like I said, you're welcome anytime, and we'll see you all next week.